All right, guys, what is up? Welcome in, GC Live fan. He is Chris Clark. I am Wes Mitchell. This is GC Live, as always, presented by our guy Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. I mean, as we always tell you, you may not be in the market for a new home right now, and that is fine. But if at some point you are, all we ask, give Clint a shot to earn your business. Maybe you're renting right now. You've been thinking about home ownership and just want to know what that looks like for you. What does the monthly payment look like? What does a down payment look like? Maybe even a situation where, you'd be paying less to own than you are to rent in some scenarios. So if it's just something you want to learn about and see where things are, where they might look for you, give Clint a shout, 803-422-6797. And as always, ClintHammond.com. You can get more information about his background. Great Gamecock. I'm sure he had some thoughts on what we're going to talk about for much of this show. Of course, we're going to talk about the game, Chris, but Mike Shula being let go by Shane Beamer on Sunday, the biggest topic of conversation around Gamecock Nation right now, which is what we're probably going to lead off with here. Chris, after you tell them about one of our amazing sponsors too.
Yeah, let's tell them about the fine folks over at Ferry Chevrolet. Joseph Ferry, fourth-generation dealer at a car dealership that's been around west in the state of South Carolina, the great state of South Carolina, since 1926. So if you're bad at math, that's about 100 years. So doing something right, obviously, honesty, integrity, a handshake. That's how the folks over at Ferry Chevrolet operate. That's 803-937-4531, 803-937-4531. You can check out their inventory at ferrychevrolet.com. That's FAIREY, Chevrolet.com, ferrychevrolet.com. Go check out their used and new inventory on their website. You can, of course, call them with any questions. So if you're in the market for a reliable new or used vehicle, go check them out. Give them an opportunity to earn your business. I think you will love what you hear from the folks over at Ferry Chevrolet, located conveniently in Orangeburg. So right between Columbia and Charleston off of 26. Convenient to both those places. And, of course, if you're around Orangeburg, extremely convenient for you. And before you visit, you can check them out, like I said, on ferrychevrolet.com. Go check them out and see what you think. Give them an opportunity to earn your business if you're in the market for a new vehicle.
All right, guys, like I said, we're going to dive into it. First of all, shout out to everybody who's already in the chat this morning as we do our Monday morning show. This is the one show of the week we do a little bit earlier just because we want to go ahead and get those football takes out there. Good morning to Fred, Coleman, Robert, Will, Garnet Yardbird, and T. Anybody else out there listening, go ahead and throw us a message in the chat if you want to shout out. Chris, obviously, South Carolina's 30-14 loss to Ole Miss at some point in this show. We will get to it. We'll dive into it. Frankly, I have not quite had the chance to go back over. I always rewatch the game on Sunday. Haven't gone back over it with a fine-tooth comb like I normally would by now because of the, frankly, the much bigger story on Sunday. It's been the last, I guess that's now 3 or 4 weeks, there have been a couple of just strange, crazy Sundays. And, of course, it started we had not seen Shane Beamer go the route of, just firing coach middle of the year. And we saw that with Lonnie Teasley. And you kind of knew, like, hey, things are a little bit different right now. To me, after the performance on Saturday, and again, not much like with the Teasley thing, this was not a one-game decision by any means. You don't fire a coach on one on-field game. This is a matter of 9 games this season, 10 games total. And I look at it, frankly, as a decision of sample size. And I know there's already been one comment, should have been a month ago. And I do think anytime you kind of have to admit, like, hey, this isn't working, you can probably almost always go, well, we probably should have just done it earlier with that hindsight. And I understand completely the response to that. I'll go ahead and get ahead of it. The response to that will be, we could all see this was an issue before. I get it. Noted. Hear you. I don't think you can give a guy the reins of the offense and then 3 games in Just be like, nah, dog, not working. This is we're done.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do that after 6 games. Now looking back, seeing how it played out, would it be a better situation to have done it during the first bye week? Frankly, the way things have played out, of course, I think anybody can see that at this point. And I know people are saying, "Well, I told you that back then." Coaches cannot operate. These are real people. These are not, they're almost celebrities now from the outside looking in. And when you see, hey, my offense is performing terribly, get the next guy in there, that sounds like a great take. It's going to end up being the correct take in this case in the end. But you can't just be like, nah, man, you're out. I think they stacked too many bad performances. The losses started to mount. 9-game sample size this season, 10-game sample size overall. Even though I still can't put a ton of blame on Shula for the bowl game. I think there are some extenuating circumstances there. But I digress. It just became too much for Beamer to ignore. I think the sample size got great enough that you're going, it just isn't getting better. And this is not all Mike Shula's fault, frankly. This is something Beamer kept saying yesterday. Everybody has a hand in this. It's not specifically always play calling. It's not specifically always development or game plan. It's just a combination of all those things. To this point, Chris, the stats to me don't matter after 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. The deeper you get into a season, the more you start seeing all the offensive stats in the SEC. I don't even hardly look at the national stuff. I always just look at how do you compare to the rest of the league. Pretty much every offensive stat. There's a battle at the bottom. South Carolina, Auburn, or Florida.
Yep.
And in almost all the major categories, one of those teams will be last, and then the other one will be second to last or third to last. Maybe there's an outlier here or there. But, Chris, 9 games into the season, last in the SEC, scoring offense, total offense, rushing offense, tackles for loss allowed, 15th of the 16 in passing and sacks allowed, 15th in third down conversion, red zone, touchdown conversion percentage, last in red zone scoring percentage, and 12th in fourth down conversion percentage. So I know that was a mouthful, but basically all those major stats you could look at, almost all of them last or second to last for South Carolina. It became a point where you could not ignore that anymore, I feel like.
Yeah. And not that Beamer wanted to, I see that sometimes. Of course, if you're a coach, you'd like your hires to work out. But there's always these, Beamer's not going to do anything. He wants to keep, all these different things. Like he has made a move. And man, there's a bunch of different directions you can go with this. But, I know people got irritated through 3 games when Beamer gave his answer about the statistics, right? And he has revisited that answer several times. He revisited it at the midway point of the season and through 6 games, right? And his answer through 3 games was small sample size. Let's see what happens. Not good enough. He kind of shifted that as South Carolina played more games, SEC games, during the course of the season. Kind of gave the take of, and I'm paraphrasing, like, we are what we are. The stats are what they are. The offense, the production has been what it has been, and we got to get better. And he made one move then. It's kind of atypical, Wes. You don't see this a ton, right? We've seen like offensive coordinators and an O-line coach or an OC and another coach kind of get changed out maybe mid-season if it happens. You don't often see, hey, there's a change made mid-season, and a few games later there's another change. Shane Beamer, and I'm going to get to maybe a greater point here soon, but I think you're right in that he recognized, like, it's been long enough. We are what we are. We're not where we need to be offensively. Let's go ahead and start the process of finding what that next step is. To go back to your point earlier, the take now, obviously with hindsight, that it didn't work out. If you were among the people that said after one game or two or three or four, whatever it may have been, this isn't working, like, you're right. But I'll also say we've seen in the past, last year's a great example of it. Last year, South Carolina had certainly not a first game offensively to write home about against Old Dominion. Scored some points against LSU, scored some points here and there. But through 6 games, the team was sitting at 3-3. They just had a performance against Ole Miss that was their worst performance of the year and scored, 3 points in that game, Wes, at home. And people were sitting there going, I mean, y'all remember this. I remember it. Kick Sellers to the curb. He's not the guy. Dowell Loggins is definitely not the guy. And then lo and behold, after that, they reel off 6 straight wins. And that team, Wes, you always bring up this stat. What did they end up second in the league in scoring offense?
Yeah, in SEC games.
In SEC play, which is, those are the most important games.
Yeah.
And, they only scored 17 against Clemson. It was the LaNorris show. Yes, I will grant you that. Absolutely. But generally, I mean, this team put up 44 points last year against Texas A&M at home, like a good Texas A&M team. They could score some points. And if we're bringing up stats this year, let's bring up the stats last year. It was a good offensive team down the stretch. And just like everybody has a hand in the lack of success this year, everybody had a hand in the success last year. Rocket Sanders, the rest of the coaching staff, LaNorris Sellers, everybody. You share in success, you share in failure. And if you're bringing up stats, like being second in the conference, in a 16-team conference in SEC play and scoring, that's pretty good. You can't do a whole lot better than that. And so if you took what it was at the beginning of the year through 6 games and said, this is clearly not working, it's never going to work, make a change, they stuck with it, and it ended up working out for them. Now, could it have been better? Yeah, absolutely, especially in the early part of the season. So I think there's certainly some credence to the idea of through 3 games, hadn't been good enough. Let's wait and see. Through 6 games, still not good enough. More alarm now. Let's wait and see. But it's now gotten to that point where you had to make a change. And you wrote something, I know, Wes, that came out on Gamecock Central that was basically Shane Beamer did what he had to do in this situation. Now, there's something else interesting here in that if you listen to Shane Beamer's comments last night on his teleconference, Wes, there's a recognition here that it's not just this season. Shane Beamer's not looking back at 21, 22, 23, and 24 and saying, that was outstanding. That's exactly what we need to be. I'm fully happy with what we were. We need to get back to that level and we'll be fine. He said, hey, this is not just this season. We have not been consistent enough offensively for several years. So if you're a fan saying, does he recognize there's a problem? I think your answer is yes, because he's coming out and saying that publicly. That's a different question than who's going to be the next OC. We don't know yet, obviously. Will the hire work out? Of course, we don't know that. If he hires somebody that everybody knows or somebody that nobody's ever heard of, whoever it may be, that person's still got to get here, put in the offense, coach games, and let's see if it's successful or not. I have a feeling that won't happen, right? But that's what we've got to do collectively. But I do think that's the one thing last night that caught my attention the most is publicly stating and recognizing, hey, we haven't been consistent enough. He didn't say my entire tenure, but for several years. And he's been here, obviously, this is year 5. So there's a recognition of that. So, Wes, does that mean philosophically something changes? Maybe. Does that mean there's a recognition of, hey, we're doing some things offensively that maybe I need to go away from in my future hire? Does it mean I haven't really found the guy, that one right guy to run this offense? Or is it all of the above? it probably is all the above. But I do think that really stood out to me in that recognition. And maybe as a Gamecock fan, that makes you feel better about the direction. Obviously, you and I are about to get into really, really tracking this thing. Probably a postseason hire, right? Probably not going to have a new offensive coordinator in place this Thursday. So some time on this thing. But as we get into it, I think very interesting point to remember.
Yeah, and I think Chris, there, he kind of found his guy in Clayton White and has stuck by him, and they have had continuity on that side of the ball. Offense, obviously, not so much. And I think when you're early in a tenure, you're going, hey, we don't really have our players yet. We don't really, we're all figuring this out. You're a literal first year head coach. When it was Satterfield, and then you're a second year head coach when Satterfield was in his second year. Then, you're getting a little bit better, you're getting better players, and maybe you see some improvements under logins and all that. And so, I think it is different when you're in year 5 and the losses are mounting, the pressure, the frustration is mounting. The pressure to make a change just from your fan base is much stronger. And, I thought it was kind of interesting too, like Beamer talking about, I believe he used the word elevate, like we need to elevate where this offense is overall. Yep. And people are going to hate this take, Chris. I'm going to give it anyway. I think you got to be very careful, no matter who it is. Got to be very careful how you present this thing to people, because most of your fans aren't sitting there watching film. Most of your fans aren't sitting there. Some of you are, which I love.
Yes.
But most of them aren't like trying to find the all 22 and like what routes and all this stuff. They're going to be going off of what they hear, what people say. Don't use the word pro style anymore. Just don't use the word, the phrase, the phrasing, pro style, throw it out.
If you're Beamer or people, what do you mean?
Beamer. When you're talking about the next hire, like, just don't say it.
Should you not say NFL too?
Well, it depends on how good they are in the NFL if you went that route. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Andy
Reid. You're going to have to be pretty freaking – like, it's going to be a pretty freaking good NFL resume to put out there.
Yeah.
But the thought of some of the things that I think Beamer wants the offense to be are still valid, because just going up and down the field on everybody, and we get caught in these things. We see it with head coaching hires too, Chris. If you were terrible on offense, got to go get an offensive guy. Got to get an offensive guy. And then if that guy fixes the offense but screws up the defense, the next coach, everybody's saying, I'm so tired of watching this terrible defense. Get a defensive-minded guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think the thought of being balanced on offense, and like I think from a scheme standpoint, what the NFL is doing isn't even what was pro style 10 years ago. So yeah. I'm here I think you got to try to modernize this thing a little bit, spread it out. We actually saw the last couple of weeks, it didn't really work consistently against Ole Miss. Worked a little bit more against Bama at times. We saw them spreading it out a little bit more, trying to get some of the option stuff down. At that point, like, that stuff isn't bad. At this point, you almost wonder, Chris, some of the like just little misses on the pitches. There was a kind of a poor pitch. There was one where you're looking at Sellers, you're saying, man, you probably could have or should have pitched that one. I'm remembering a play. How much of that is just because that really hasn't been what you've done all year? Like, would that stuff clean up if that was kind of what you were majoring in, right? So I think there's some value, though, to having an offense that has answers to everything. And what I mean by that is some of the college offenses over the years are kind of one-trick ponies, and this is what they do, and they do it very well. But if a defense can shut that particular thing down, it's over. And so I think, yes, going a little bit more towards the simplifying of things, a little bit more spread. If Sellers is back next year, building the thing around his skill set, having a coach that can bring in an offense that gets molded a little bit more, is a little bit more just flexible to be molded to his players. I think all those things have value, but I don't necessarily know that you have to have, oh, we're going to go tempo, we're going to go up and down the field, we're going to because then you just put your defense at a disadvantage. Remember when under Muschamp, the best offense they had was when they went to Brian McClendon and they went heavy tempo and they went RPO, like RPO heavy. And at times, that offense lit teams up. And then when it came time to close out games, remember that Florida game? That offense struggled. And it also put the defense at a disadvantage. So I think clearly this is the most important hire of the Shane Beamer era. Like, it just is.
Yep.
Got to get it right. It does not have to be a big name. It doesn't have to be, for me, it doesn't have to be an all-in college offense. I think you want there to be some college background here this time, frankly. But if there is a little NFL background in here too, I'm not saying that's like out of the question. To me, the biggest thing, I need some flexibility. What does Kiffin's offense do? It molds every year to what that quarterback can do. What does Heupel's offense do every year? They run the damn ball for one, but they also mold to what the quarterback can do.
Yeah.
So John says I'm wrong. It needs to be a big-time name. No, it doesn't, John. It needs to be a guy who can go out there and build an offense around his players and can put them in a position to execute. I don't care what their name is. If they can go out there and get the job done, that is what is important, not that the person wins the press conference.
Yeah, and I think, what's your definition of big name? Is it somebody that everybody's heard of, or is it a guy somewhere, even at a smaller school? Or, we've seen this trend lately, Wes. Not saying this will be it, but, a G5 or FCS head coach who's making, think about an FCS head coach who's making 300, 400 grand. Hey, come here, quadruple, quintuple your salary. Don't worry about roster building and NIL. Come recruit quarterbacks, develop quarterbacks, call plays, right? Just as an example. Or it may be an OC at a smaller school, maybe an OC at a bigger school. Who knows? But you got to go out and find a guy. There's plenty of instances, if you go back and look at the history of OC hires, where an OC gets hired. This is going to be great. This guy's had success. He's a big name. People know him. Everybody knows him. Doesn't work out as well. There are examples of it does work out well. There are examples of guys who, have been hot names at smaller schools that have moved up to another school and worked out. There's examples of it not, right? Like this is an art, not a science. I do think if you look back, Wes, at Shane Beamer's history with those seasons, I was thinking about that last night and this morning, kind of researching and working on writing some stuff for Gamecock Central. A lot of people talk about the NFL ties for Shane Beamer, and every coach except Mike Bobo never coached in the NFL, right? I don't think so. Mike Bobo was his OC. He leaves before he coaches a game under Beamer, obviously a holdover from that era, from the Muschamp era. A guy that Frank Beamer in 2013 tried to hire at Virginia Tech when Shane was on staff in Blacksburg. And he ended up staying at Georgia. There was familiarity. Mike Bobo's considered a good OC, right? Like he's been productive throughout his career. There's no OC in the history of football that is universally loved and universally has a 100% approval rating every single year. Like that does not happen. But generally, Mike Bobo's considered a really good OC. Obviously, that didn't work out. You look at the rest of the history. Everybody else has had some type of NFL background. The interesting thing is that Marcus Satterfield, who had, according to everything that we know and have heard, had the biggest playbook, the most in-depth offense, as we've documented over the years. Everybody knows this. Only had 1 year in the NFL as an assistant, not a play caller. He went with Matt Rule to the Panthers. Sat's other experience was at the college level. Now, he ran a more pro-style offense, right? And even what he ran with Rule at Temple was different than what they ran at Baylor, different than what they ran at South Carolina, what Sat ran at South Carolina. But interesting that he had the 1 year of NFL experience, but had the most, I think what fans would call the most NFL, even if that's not actually true, or the most pro-style, quote-unquote, offense. Then you had Dow Loggins, who had the most extensive experience in the NFL. He actually kind of simplified things more. There are more college-y elements of that offense. You have Mike Shula, who's been a play caller both at the NFL and the college level. Wes, one thing that I think if I'm being honest, overlooked about Shula, or not overlooked, but maybe overlooked's the right word. I kind of dismissed it a little bit. Had not actually called plays at any level in a while, right? Had been more of a position coach. Last year he called plays, I think it was 2019, in the NFL with the New York Giants. And there were some reasons, and Beamer talked about this on Sunday night, to feel like, hey, not just continuity, but hey, Mike Shula was really good last year for LaNorris Sellers. I think anybody in the program would tell you that. But as we know, there's a difference in being basically a personal quarterbacks coach as an analyst and weighing in versus actually having the keys and having the reins to the entire offense and being responsible for quarterback development. And the proof's in the pudding. It didn't work. So I say all that to say you don't necessarily have to go out and find a guy of, hey, I'm going to look at this guy's resume, and if he's ever been in the NFL, I'm totally staying away, because there are head coaches who call plays. There are OCs that call plays that have been in the NFL before. So I don't think you need to say we're staying completely away from NFL. But that said, does there need to be a philosophical shift in going more towards that flexible, moldable offense, that college, a little bit more college style offense is catered to your team? I think you have a point there for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I promise I'm not trying to. I think it needs to be a guy with a little bit more of just an identity of this is what my offense is from kind of a global standpoint. Now, it is flexible enough to mold it to different players, but ultimately I know what we want to be. I get very, now after seeing things play out, I get very nervous if I hear, we're going to go into the spring, we're going to see what we do well, and we're going to mold this thing based on what we do well, just from like a big picture standpoint. Like, man, we need to have at least there needs to be a system, I think, and then that system needs to be somewhat flexible. Here's the thing, guys. Almost all of these offensive coordinators, this is why it's hard to hire good offensive coordinators. For one, Troy Aikman has said it's the hardest job in football. It's being an offensive coordinator. Now, if you have an elite guy, if you have an elite one, and they're like in lockstep with that quarterback and they're kind of completing each other's sentences and it's locked in, it is a thing of beauty. But those guys, those elite guys, I think those guys are few and far between, to be honest. And then when you have them for a short period of time. Now, that's your goal, is to get some guys like that. All these guys are smart. Like you may sit there, you may watch the offense on Saturday, and I'm sure people have yelled at their TV, thrown their remote, and said, this guy's an idiot. No, if you're an offense coordinator at that level, you're intelligent, you know the game of football, you have some great ideas. You really do. And Now, I think there are some play callers, there are some coordinators that kind of take the recipe, they take the ingredients, and they kind of make a meal that just doesn't flow together, right? It's like you have a meal, but all the sides don't really go with the main course, and you're like individually like, hey, there were some good thoughts here. This just didn't work for me. Now I think you have a pretty decently sized batch of people that can probably take an offense and maybe they don't really elevate the parts, but they don't really screw it up either. And that's kind of that middle ground. You know, you can if you have good players, if you have great players, you can get by with that person. But then you have that very small window of people that you're just going like this is like Lane Kiffin, you know, like everybody, even if they hate Lane Kiffin, that's kind of been around him, it's like that guy's an actual offensive genius. Like he will find your weakness and then he will exploit it. And the thing about these guys, Chris, watch Lane Kiffin in that offense this past Saturday. It wasn't always pretty for them either. Like I think we do maybe glorify or glamorize other offenses because you don't watch them every week. So if you're watching South Carolina every week, every single play, you're seeing the good, the bad, the ugly. You'll be like, there's going to be plays in football where you're like, we don't know what we're doing at all. That's just football. If you watched Ole Miss every week, there's going to be plays where they look like they don't know what they're doing. And it's going to look ugly, especially in today's transfer portal heavy college football. So a lot of times we're a little bit harder on our team, the team you're watching all the time, than you are maybe on watching highlights of another team. But over time, there's going to be good play calls. There's going to be terrible play calls. Over time, what you're looking for is that guy that can give you that little advantage, that little, you know, even Dow. How many times with Dow Loggins did you say, dang, Dow schemed one up on that play and he got him on that one? Mm-hmm. I feel like I want the guy. I mean, Lane on 4th and 1 is running a freaking, again, I haven't even gone back and watched the game, a double reverse pass. Like Alabama had answers on 3rd down, 4th down, and 2-point conversion on offense. To me, I want that guy who's got that little creativity, that little extra, well, hey, we're going to put this in for this exact situation. We're going to rep the crap out of it. And then when the situation comes up, we're going to call it and it's going to work more often than not. It's not going to always work, but more often than not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I love one of the lines, and everybody needs to go check out your piece you wrote that I referenced earlier. So I'll take one of your lines from it in that short term, if we're looking at a play or a stretch of or a game or a stretch of games, and the execution can be on players, but longer term, it's on the coaches, right? So ultimately, if you've got things that are themes, generally you do have to start going, all right, what is being done from a scheme standpoint? What's being done from a coaching standpoint? And you're right, Wes, like we talk about a lot. If an offense is struggling, what do we say as a catch-all? I think I even do this sometimes. So we start talking about play calling. Well, yeah, sometimes it is the play call. A lot of times it's just the execution. And I would argue the biggest part of your job as an offensive play caller and as a coaching staff is to help your players execute. Situational awareness, technique, coaching points, how to do things. You can call any play. And sometimes, yes, you're going to give yourself a schematic advantage with what you call. That's the goal. But in football, that is not going to happen. Sometimes you just got to be able to line up and protect. You just got to be able to line up. People get so mad about running, another inside zone run. You know, a lot of teams run inside zone and they're really good at it. Another run up the middle. If you can't run up the middle at some point when you need to in college football, you're not going to have a good offense. You've got to be able to do that at some point, particularly if it's part of your scheme and you can have success in that scheme. But it goes back to, hey, when are you calling those things? Very fair. How are they executing it? Can your players execute it? Because if they can't, you either need to teach them how to do it better or you need to scrap it, And so it's a very complex thing when you've got an offensive scheme, a defensive scheme, 22 guys on the field at one time, all doing different things. The defense trying to stop you from doing that particular thing. It's hard. But it is, I've had a lot of Gamecock fans remark to me this season, and they're right. Why does it look easier for other teams? I think part of that, Wes, is exactly what you said, in that we're not going and watching every single play of every team. We're going and looking at box scores, stats, wins, and losses. But that said, do other teams make it look easier on offense than it has for South Carolina? Absolutely. And that's why we're sitting here in this position with South Carolina looking for a new offensive coordinator. I think you hit on something earlier too, the word identity. I think it gets almost overused some, but obviously this team has not had an offensive identity. They had one, hey, here's a really good passing game. Hey, you ran the ball really well in this game. Some games you do neither. If it's not one thing, it's another, right? Can you find a system and a play caller, a guy who has a system and an identity that you can install and say, this is what we do. This is what we do really, really well. Ideally, it is being balanced and being able to run the football and throw the football. But who can mold this thing to the talent on your team in a year in, year out basis? Who can take LaNorris Sellers? I think that's a big part of this too, right? When Shane Beamer analyzes this thing, he talked about it a little bit last night, and he was careful. He's not going to really throw people under the bus, as we know. But Sellers, no doubt, has regressed, another overused word, regressed from the form that he was at the end of last year to what he is now. There's no doubt. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But can you help your guys execute better? And Wes, if you look at the themes, to go back, last point before I turn it back over to you here, getting long-winded. If you look at the themes under Shane Beamer offensively, there are themes during his tenure. And I think that's what he was talking about last night. The inconsistencies. You can't say they've never had a good offensive game. They absolutely have. They've had some really bad offensive games, and they've been inconsistent. Except for 2024, this has not been a team that's been able to rush the football effectively. Except for 2024. Just in the big picture. This is a team that's given up a lot of sacks. This is a team that's given up a lot of tackles for loss. And it's not just a 1 or 2 game sample size in the 4.5 years. It's not just a 10 game sample size. This is now a big sample size, almost 5 years. And so that is what I think has to be addressed. And I think that's what he's looking to address. And again, if you're looking for, does he recognize that? I think there are some indications that he does. But now you got to go out and do the hardest part, and that is find somebody to fix it.
I do want to have the Sellers conversation because I think it's important, which we can tie in the game, I think, Saturday, and this greater conversation, the OC conversation, together, I think, with the Sellers conversation. But first, let me tell you about our friends at Game Time. Man, Chris, the South Carolina-Clemson game, it is looking to be, for both programs, the one opportunity to salvage some semblance of a positive to finish the year. So if you don't already have tickets, if you're not a season ticket holder, our friends at Game Time, they're going to be able to help you out with that. GameTime.co, of course, the Game Time app be the easiest way to do it. They're giving the advantage back to the fans. It is the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in a few taps. Very, very easy to use. I've used it multiple times myself, and the Game Time guarantee is going to guarantee that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. They have exclusive discounts like the zone deals where you choose the section. Game Time selects the seat, and you will save. Of course, easy to find and buy college football tickets and tickets for every kind of event. That could be concerts, NFL. They were talking in the chat, man. The the Panthers are actually pretty good this year. So if that sounds like something you want to do, right up to Charlotte, watch some Sunday football. Game Time has that for you as well. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code ON3, that's ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply.
All right, let's tell everybody about our friends over at Palmetto Golf and Belts. Oops, sorry, Wes, you put it up for me and I took it off. Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com. Online shop. If you are a golfer, it's a must visit, frankly. Brandon Cohn, our guy, Gamecock Central member for a long time, friend of mine, big Gamecock fan. Definitely, Wes, like our guy Clint Hammond, has thoughts on the South Carolina offense and the season. He wants to see things turn around too. Go check him out at palmettogolfing.com. Got a variety of awesome golfing gear, custom golf belts, gloves, towels, and tees in a variety of designs. The cross design, very popular. The Palmetto Tree and Moon. He's got the state of South Carolina blue. He's got the garnet flavor for the University of South Carolina for all the fans out there. If you're not a golfer, go check out a gift. We're already in November, Wes, which is hard to believe. So Christmas right around the corner. Go and get that golfer in your life a gift. You can also check out the needlepoint belts. They're extremely well made, extremely popular. I know a bunch of people that have them. I have one. Extremely well made, a lot more affordable than a lot of the options out there. Our members on GamecockCentral.com on the Insiders Forum are loving the products. Got a lot of great reviews. It's always got some great sales as well going on. So check them out. PalmettoGolfing.com, Palmetto Golf and Belts.
Definitely shout out to both those great sponsors for us here on GC Live. Chris, let's have the Sellers conversation. I do think I don't know, man. There's some nuance here. So Sellers didn't play well on Saturday. I think we all saw that. I think that was pretty apparent. That was the most uncomfortable I feel like we have seen him, probably since his first game as starter against Old Dominion. And I do think probably one of the single biggest reasons that Mike Shula is no longer the offensive coordinator at South Carolina is that he has not been able to unlock the Sellers we saw last year. And I know we are all guilty of being kind of reactionary to what we've seen most recently. And so there's some Sellers takes out there, he's not this, he's not that. Let's go back to sample size. Maybe that's our theme of the show. That was not a small sample size for Sellers last year. Like, it's not like the guy showed flashes of greatness last year. He showed a fairly consistent ability to make plays for you with his feet and with his arms. Now, was there development to be had as a passer in terms of the footwork, in terms of progressions, in terms of layering the football, in terms of putting more touch on the football at times? Absolutely. In no way am I saying he was a complete product as a player. However, the fact of the matter is, this was not somebody watching Sellers for one game and he had a great game and that was it last year. We saw plenty of the guy playing to his potential. So that player is still in there. And I think the biggest issue is that all those expectations coming in for this offense, all the preseason reports, all of it was based on LaNorris Sellers being back and LaNorris Sellers building off of the final 6 regular season games from last year. And that just has not happened. So here's the thing. What do I want in a new offensive coordinator? What do I think South Carolina needs in a new offensive coordinator? If LaNorris Sellers is back in the Garnet and Black next year, which I do still think there's a chance that he is, I want the guy that can, Beamer used the word elevate. I want the guy that can help Sellers elevate. Because, yes, at some level, every player has to own up to their own play, right? Like, I'm not saying for Sellers, he just gets a complete pass. Not saying that at all. However, Has the offense been built around what he does best? Or has the offense been built more around what you're trying to develop him to do best? I think it's the second thing. So for me, watching him on Saturday, watching him just look uncomfortable, watching the throws he missed. Guys, these are throws he makes. Like, people can pretend, oh, he's a running back playing quarterback. Go back and watch his games. Yes, he's missed some throws over his career. So has every quarterback in the history of football. The next guy has got to be able to take those talents and bring it forward. And if Sellers is gone, he's got to be the next guy's got to elevate your other young quarterbacks that are in this room. We'll see what Aaron Nolan does. He hadn't really played this year. There's a lot of excitement about Cutter Woods as well. You've got, in theory, Landon Duckworth coming in as well. Talented 4-star guy. Everybody in the country wanted him. There's probably going to be some talent to work with. So what can you do to elevate those young guys in that room?
And I think, the quarterback question, because I'll get back to Sellers, but just as a general point, Beamer mentioned that on Sunday too. I think that's one of the frustrations, not just for him, but for fans, is they're looking at this thing going, man, we got some guys that were pretty highly recruited, and some of them are young. Carolina's played two freshman receivers a lot this year, and then some other guys have played in spurts. Malik Clark played a little against Ole Miss. Jaden Sellers missed the game, but he's played. He's kind of come on lately. They got 2 other guys in the hopper that haven't played as much, but were, highly recruited, 4-star guys. Got some offensive linemen that were wanted by other schools. You have a quarterback, certainly, who's a really, really good talent. Like, you've got some talent on this team, and the production has just not matched that. And I think that's the frustration. But yeah, for Sellers, I mean, you don't look at LaNorris Sellers and has anybody ever used the word limited with him? Like, he's not limited from a talent standpoint. We know what he can do with his legs. He can make the throws. He's still, I mean, we saw it a little bit the other night. Like, he can throw a really nice deep ball. Like, we've seen that many, many times. A lot of the throws he missed the other night on Saturday, he can make the throws. But I go back to that comfort level that you mentioned. I think that's a really good way to put it. He looked very uncomfortable. There were some things, Wes, that Ole Miss did with how they'd rush 2 guys at some points. They're rushing, I think, 3 guys on the touchdown pass to Harbor, and had 4 to 5 guys in kind of a shallow zone drop with eyes on the quarterback for the run or short passes. And they schemed up something pretty well. Ole Miss kind of busted it. Nick Harbor ran past a guy. Successful play, right? But you don't see enough of that. Carolina's had to be too overly reliant on making something special happen on deep balls and Sellers doing Sellers things. And at some point there is an expiration on that, even for him, because if a big part of your offense is having Sellers scramble around and making something happen, you are trading off getting sacked. We saw that even last year. People forget that. People got so angry talking about Sellers taking the next step and being able to fire off the ball versus being reliant on, let me make 2 5-star defensive linemen miss and go scramble. Even LaNorris Sellers is going to go down in some of those instances. It's happened too much this year. So how do you fix that? Well, coaching, but also having an offensive system, Wes, that makes it easier to where you're not in those positions as much. How can you help him get rid of the ball faster? How can you help him scheme up some things that really play to his strengths while still keeping some of the elements of, let's take some deep shots and hit him? You got a guy like Nick Harbor who can, if he got time to protect, he can run past everybody in the secondary. Really tough to cover, but you can't rely on that every single play, nor can you run that every single play. That can't be your offense. So, yeah, I mean, just generally thinking about the next guy, how can you scheme that up to where you have a system that plays into his strengths and frankly makes it, quarterback's not an easy position. So how can you make it easier? And how can you get him back on the right track to where he's playing more like we saw in the back half of the 2024 season?
Yeah, no doubt. Robert says there wasn't much tape on Sellers. at that point. Now they haven't figured out. Defenses are exposing him, in my opinion. I don't think so, Robert. I mean, have defenses adjusted to your point? Absolutely. Matter of fact, I feel like Ole Miss probably last year was one of the first teams to start really putting those pieces together against LaNorris, and he was coming off the injury at that point. But we saw teams, more zone, more, hey, we're going to dedicate everything we have to stopping this guy. And Ole Miss and then Illinois in the bowl game were probably the two most just drastic sort of, we're going to change our entire defensive philosophy to stop this guy teams. I mean, like you said, Chris, they were rushing two, but they were rushing the two interior guys, and then the two edge guys were just playing. They basically became spies. And if Sellers tried to escape the pocket, they were triggering and attacking at that point once that better angle was created. So credit to Ole Miss. They did have a good plan there. But here's why I don't think that's the only thing that's happened, because there are plays to be made. Like if defenses just had it shut down, and maybe this is your point, like, well, he can't execute those plays. He can. He absolutely can. He just isn't at a high enough clip. So to me, a lot of that goes back to, like, I think Dow did a better job of putting LaNorris in a comfortable situation where he's comfortable reading what he was seeing. He was seeing the field better. Right now, for whatever reason, that just is not there. And, it's kind of interesting, man. The NFL guys, the answer almost always is you're trying to do too much. Like you need to simplify a little bit, because these college guys, I know we treat them like professionals now. I know they're paid like professionals, but they still have to adhere to that NCAA limit on the number of hours they can be in the building. So you can install, the NFL teams have hundreds of variations to everything they run. And they have to tweak everything on a weekly basis, but it is their full-time job. That is not the case with college. So it is ultimately the offensive coordinators that can take all of their knowledge. I don't think I completed this thought earlier, Chris. All the OCs are smart. They all know football. Every single one of them. The ones that are able to take everything they know and distill it down into a system, into a scheme, and their guys learn it and they know it and they're comfortable with it and they can execute it. And then on a week-to-week basis, they can take that scheme, distill it down into a game plan, and the guys are comfortable with it. They know it. They can execute it. And then they can take that game plan and on drive-to-drive basis, on down-to-down basis, 1st and 10, 3rd and long, 3rd and 2, can call it with flow where the guys are comfortable and they can execute it. And they still have an answer for the defense throwing you a coverage or an approach that you didn't expect at all. Those are the guys that are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can find all that. Honestly, those are the elite guys. But can you find a guy that can give you 85% of that? The biggest thing to me, the first step, find me the guy that can take all that's in his head and distill it down into a scheme that the guys can get incredibly comfortable about. Mike Leach installed his offense. I think famously it's like a 3-day install or something.
Yeah.
Is that the right number? I know
it's something like that. And it was even like, when he would call plays, it's like, here's the play. But I mean, literally you would point at his head. Think about this play too. It was the whole, like, here's the play. It's Black Atlanta. And it's think about this play. And if the quarterback goes up, sees what the defense is in, or just kind of wants to change it on his own, go do it, And so it is about having answers. Like I think it's about having schematic answers, but it's also, to go back to execution, being able to rep with your players hey, here's what we have to like. If you get something you don't expect, here's your fallback. And taking that from the practice field to the high stakes SEC game, where you need something to go tie or win. Like that's the hardest part, but that is what you need. It's the coaching points, the execution points, being able to help your players. And I think that's what we've seen like this year when you look at LaNorris's decision making, I think you could say, Wes. Like, yes, he has to take ownership of that too, which Shane Beamer's talked about a lot. Everybody has a hand in it. That's LaNorris too. Missing a throw, not seeing a throw. But can you find a coach who's helping him hit those at a higher clip, even when you get something that you don't anticipate? Because that's going to happen. You're going to have a play where you look at it, the coaches are up in the box and on the sideline going, oh, we got him here. Ball snapped. We got this route on. Something's going to happen. Usually during that play, it's missing a block. It's whatever. A route goes awry. Something's going to happen before the ball's even out of the quarterback's hands to potentially have that thing go awry. Can you help him as a quarterback, have not only a schematic answer, but an execution answer? Like that's a big part of this.
No doubt. All right, y'all. Hey, we're out of time. We didn't really get into the Ole Miss game a ton. Not that, I don't really think that's top of mind for a lot of you at this point. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we rehash at some point later this week. But obviously, the story of that game, South Carolina just not good enough on offense, and that being an offense for Ole Miss that you're just not going to keep down for forever, I feel like. Held them to 1 for 11 on third downs. That's kind of one of those stats, man. If you'd told me that beforehand, I'd have gone, maybe. Couldn't run the ball again, though, dude. Ole Miss has given up. They've given up some yardage on the ground this year. And I know they got some emerging players up front. They got some pass rushers. They got some interior guys. Dude, they have not been great against the run. And Carolina was not really able to get – I went into it saying, hey, if you could run the ball like you did at LSU and rekindle that and then get that third down number, you probably have a great chance to win that game because Ole Miss really did not execute really as efficiently or as consistently as they normally do. They had a couple of turnovers as well, but offense is just disjointed, man. Even the touchdown drive, the Harbor touchdown catch, that drive was 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 3 steps. It was just disjointed. Yep. So ultimately, got to find a way to get out of that. But all right, y'all, we're going to out of here. More coverage throughout the week. As always, GamecockCentral.com. Come check us out. Appreciate everybody that interacted there in the chat. Appreciate y'all more than you know. He is Chris. I am Wes. We'll be back later on this week. Y'all have a good one.